ever heard of someone building a stone tower in the woods just to focus better?
Sounds a bit extreme, right?
It is.
Mhm.
But that's exactly what Carl Jung, the famous psychiatrist, actually did. Maybe he was onto something.
Maybe so. There's something to be said for getting away from it all to really concentrate.
Exactly. And that's what we're exploring in this deep dive. Why going deep is so valuable, especially today.
It's a timely topic for sure. Our world seems designed to pull us in a million different directions.
It really does. We're using excerpts from Cal Newport's book Deep Work, which you provided, to uncover its key takeaways.
And how those takeaways can be applied in practical ways to enhance our lives.
More importantly, how they apply to you, the listener. We'll be unpacking how deep work is like a superpower.
A superpower in today's world.
Yeah. We'll also be looking at why it's become so rare.
And even the science behind why it could make you happier.
And of course, we've got those actionable tips you're always looking for.
Because what good is all this knowledge without a way to put it into practice?
Right. Okay, let's dive into this superpower idea. The book starts off strong with the example of Nate Silver.
The election forecaster.
Yes. What's fascinating is that his success isn't just about being smart, is it?
No, not at all. Silver's edge is his ability to use these powerful tools and systems to get insights that others miss,
He uses things like SQL databases,
to process huge amounts of polling data.
which takes some serious deep work, I imagine, not just skimming the surface.
Exactly. It's about going deep, really understanding the data and the patterns within it.
And the book argues that this applies to more than just data science or statistics.
Right, absolutely. Learning any new, difficult skill quickly depends on focus, deep focus.
And that focus actually impacts your brain,
It does. It helps build myelin around your neurons.
which basically helps your brain work better and faster.
Exactly. Speeds up the signaling, makes it cleaner.
So deep focus literally rewires your brain for the better.
It's like upgrading your mental hardware.
Amazing. But you also mentioned shallow work earlier. How does that fit into all of this?
Think of shallow work as those easy, replicable tasks we often do while distracted.
Like what? Give me some examples.
Email, meetings, endlessly scrolling on social media, all those things that feel productive because we're busy.
But they don't really create much value.
Exactly. It's the deep work that truly moves the needle.
That makes sense. But why is deep work so rare these days?
Well, deep work points to a few reasons. One being that our modern workplaces are practically designed for distraction.
What do you mean by that?
Open offices, constant connectivity, email, instant messaging, pressure to be active on social media.
So we're constantly bombarded with input.
Right, and it makes it really hard to go deep. And what makes it worse is that it's hard to measure the real impact of these distractions.
It's hard to measure.
Yes. The book calls this the metric black hole. Without that clear feedback on what's truly valuable.
We tend to default to what's easiest.
And often, that's shallow work.
So we need a better way to measure what truly matters. Otherwise, we get caught up in the busy work.
It's like focusing on social media engagement instead of the actual sales from those interactions.
It can be misleading.
Absolutely. And then there's what deep work calls the cult of the internet, that anything online is automatically good.
Even for businesses that have nothing to do with the internet.
Right. It's this assumption that every business needs a Facebook page. But does a company that delivers, let's say, refrigerated goods, really benefit from that?
It seems like it's more about being visible than being productive.
That's a great point. We're prioritizing what we can easily see over what actually creates value.
So deep work is valuable, but sadly, it's becoming more rare. But here's where it gets really interesting. Deep work argues that it's essential for a good life.
Not just a productive one.
This is where the science comes in, right?
It does. Neurologically, our brains are wired to be more satisfied when we're deeply engaged. The science writer Winifred Gallagher, she noticed this while battling cancer.
Really? So even in the midst of something so difficult, finding deep engagement was helpful.
It was. Focusing on positive experiences, even simple things, walks, enjoying a martini, things like that, it had a big impact on her well-being.
So she was choosing to focus on the good, and it actually helped her cope.
Yes. And this aligns with research showing that shallow tasks actually keep our minds in a state of stress.
Like dealing with a never-ending to-do list.
Or an overflowing inbox.
Deep work, on the other hand, allows us to enter that flow state.
That in-the-zone feeling, where time flies and work feels effortless.
I've definitely experienced that. It's a great feeling.
It is. And psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, his research found that this flow state is directly linked to happiness.
People are just happier when they're deeply engaged in something.
especially when it's challenging and meaningful.
So deep work is not just about getting things done. It's about feeling better and finding more meaning in what we do.
Absolutely. And there's a philosophical argument for deep work as well. Philosophers Hubert Dreyfus and Sean Dorrance Kelly, they argue that just like a craftsman finds meaning in shaping wood, we find meaning in mastering difficult skills.
It's about connecting to something bigger than ourselves, finding purpose in the pursuit of mastery.
Exactly. Like a coder who gets lost in the flow of building an elegant solution. There's deep satisfaction in that.
Okay, I'm convinced. Deep work is valuable, makes us happier, even connects us to something bigger. But how do we actually do it?
Does deep work offer any practical guidance?
That's the big question, right?
It does. And one of the most impactful strategies is the shutdown ritual.
Shutdown ritual. Tell me more about that.
It's all about training your brain to disconnect at the end of the workday.
So, like creating a clear boundary
Right.
between work and personal time.
Exactly. Allowing your brain to truly rest and recharge. That recharge is crucial for going deep the next day. Now, you mentioned that you sometimes struggle with disconnecting after work.
I do. It's hard to switch off sometimes.
The shutdown ritual could be really helpful for you. Imagine ending your day feeling truly relaxed, knowing you've prepped for tomorrow.
That sounds amazing. I'm intrigued. How does this ritual actually work?
It involves 3 key steps: review, plan, and shutdown. At the end of your workday, take a few minutes to
Review what?
what you accomplished and what's left to do, then create a plan for tackling those remaining tasks. Finally, you say a shutdown phrase, something like, work is done, or time to recharge.
I love that. It's so simple, but it seems so powerful.
The power is in its consistency. By doing it every day, you signal to your brain that it's time to switch gears.
Okay, I'm going to try this. What other strategies does deep work suggest?
Another powerful technique you can use is productive meditation. It's about turning that dead time, like your commute,
Or what?
or a walk, exactly, into opportunities to think deeply.
So instead of zoning out or scrolling through my phone, I'm using that time to work through a problem in my mind.
Exactly. Focus on a single problem. Let your mind wander around it. You might be surprised by the insights that emerge.
That's really interesting. So I'm using that downtime to actively engage with the problem instead of just passively consuming information.
Precisely. It's about being intentional with your time and attention, making the most of those in-between moments.
Okay, shutdown, ritual, and productive meditation. 2 great takeaways already. What else can we glean from deep work?
Well, this is where things get really practical. Have you ever tried scheduling every minute of your day?
Scheduling every minute. Wow, that sounds intense. But I'm definitely curious to hear more. It does sound like a big commitment. But maybe there's a method to the madness. Does deep work talk about the benefits of this?
Oh, yeah. The idea isn't to be, like, rigid or anything, but to be more intentional with how you spend your time.
Instead of just letting your day get hijacked by distractions.
Right. You decide how you want to spend each block of time.
So it's like creating a roadmap for your day. But I can see how it would be easy to fall back into old habits.
It definitely takes discipline. Deep work emphasizes building rituals to support deep work habits. One interesting approach is the monastic philosophy.
Okay, monastic philosophy.
Yeah.
Sounds intense. Are we talking about joining a monastery here?
Not literally, of course.
Yeah.
It's about adopting that monk-like mindset when it comes to work, creating those periods of total isolation.
So like a writer who goes off to a secluded cabin to finish a book.
Exactly. The book actually talks about Donald Knuth. He's a famous computer scientist. He stopped using email altogether to focus on his research.
Wow, that's commitment. But I can see how it would be necessary for like truly groundbreaking work.
It's about recognizing that deep work is often nonlinear. You can't just squeeze it in between meetings. You need those dedicated blocks of time for true immersion.
This reminds me of something you said earlier about minimizing shallow work. It seems like even if you can go deep, those shallow tasks are always pulling you back.
That's such a good point. Deep work really dives deep into strategies for eliminating shallow work, or at least minimizing it.
Okay, I'm all ears. What were some of those strategies?
Some of them are pretty radical, like quitting social media entirely.
Whoa, big step. But I can see the logic if you're serious about minimizing distractions.
It's all about being ruthless, evaluating the tools and activities in your life, and getting rid of anything that's not truly essential.
So being intentional with your time and attention, choosing to spend them on what really matters, which might mean saying no to some things.
It might, It might even mean disconnecting from certain technologies, creating a life that supports your deep work, allows you to do your best work, your most meaningful work. Now, deep work also recognizes that not everyone can go full monk mode.
Not all of us can just disappear into a cabin in the woods.
Right, that's where the bimodal philosophy comes in.
Bimodal philosophy, what's that?
It's more flexible. You alternate between periods of intense deep work and more shallow collaborative work.
So, like, you have those designated monk mode periods,
Yeah.
but you still interact with the world.
Exactly. A great example is Adam Grant, the Wharton professor. He structures his years so he has semesters for teaching.
And semesters for research.
Yes. And during those research semesters, he goes deep for days at a time, shuts off all distractions.
That's a great example. It shows how you can balance focused work and collaboration.
It's about being strategic. Deep work also talks about the journalistic philosophy.
Okay, another philosophy. This one sounds interesting.
This is even more flexible. It's about being able to shift into deep work whenever you have a moment.
Like a journalist who have to write a story on a deadline.
Exactly. The book talks about Walter Isaacson. He wrote that massive biography of Henry Kissinger.
While also working as a journalist.
Yes. He made use of every available moment, even writing during breaks at parties.
Finding those pockets of deep work wherever he could.
Exactly. So all three of these philosophies, they highlight the importance of ritualizing your deep work.
So having a set routine, that tells your brain it's time to focus.
Exactly. Could be going to a specific location, using certain tools, even listening to a particular type of music. It's about creating an environment that helps you get into that flow state.
Makes sense. Our brains love routines. So having that deep work ritual makes it easier to focus.
And Newport even suggests using what he calls grand gestures to enhance these rituals.
Grand gestures, what does that even mean?
It's about making a dramatic change in your environment or behavior that shows your commitment to deep work.
So like renting a cabin for a week to finish a project?
That's a good one. Or even just going to a coffee shop where you know you can focus. It's about breaking out of your normal routine,
Creating that sense of novelty.
which can really boost concentration. He mentions Bill Gates, who used to take think wakes, isolated himself to work on big ideas for Microsoft.
Wow, inspiring. Even the most successful people see the value of deep work.
And here's another surprising aspect of deep work: learning to embrace boredom.
Wait, boredom, how does that help?
It seems counterintuitive, but being able to tolerate boredom is actually crucial. We're so used to constant stimulation from our phones or computers that we get antsy when we're not being entertained.
I know, I reach for my phone the second I feel a little bored.
And that's the problem. Deep work requires you to sit with a problem, to wrestle with it, even when it's not fun.
So training my mind to resist those distractions, to be comfortable with a little bit of discomfort.
And the book suggests a few strategies. One is scheduling internet blocks, specific times for checking email or social media.
So you're not constantly switching between tasks.
Right. And another is productive meditation, which we talked about earlier. Use those in-between moments to think deeply.
Without reaching for my phone.
Right. So it's about ritualizing deep work, building those habits that support focus.
Right.
But are there any other techniques for strengthening those mental muscles?
Like what?
Deep work actually suggests memory training.
Memory.
Yeah.
How does that tie into deep work?
It might seem like a tangent, but memory training is a great way to improve concentration. There's this example of Daniel Kiloff, a student who went from struggling with ADD to graduating with honors after training his memory.
So it's about making your mind more agile and focused.
Exactly. Newport recommends this specific exercise: memorizing a shuffled deck of cards.
Sounds tough.
It is, but there are techniques that make it easier. And it's not just about memorizing cards.
It's about the benefits that come with it.
Improved focus, attention to detail, the ability to hold complex information in your mind. All of that's crucial for deep work.
So we've got rituals, memory training, strategies for embracing boredom, ready to tackle eliminating shallow work from your life. It does sound daunting, eliminating shallow work, but also kind of liberating. I'm ready to dive into those strategies.
Okay, great. And keep in mind, we're not aiming for zero shallow work. That's probably not realistic.
Right, not for most of us anyway.
But we want to drastically reduce it. All that wasted time and energy.
Freeing up those resources for the deep work.
Exactly. Shifting the balance, making deep work the priority. And one of the most powerful strategies for this is scheduling every minute of your day.
We talked about the benefits, but it still seemed kind of overwhelming. How do you actually do this without feeling restricted?
Well, the key is intentionality. It's not about being rigid. It's about deciding in advance how you want to spend your time.
Instead of letting distractions run the show.
Right. Deep work gives some good examples of how to do this effectively, like Laura Vanderkam, the time management expert.
Yeah.
She tracked her time for an entire year to see where it was actually going.
To get a real picture of how she was spending her time.
And she found that she was consistently underestimating certain activities, like watching TV.
That's so interesting. It's like we have this distorted view of how we use our time.
We often do. And that's why scheduling every minute can be so eye-opening. You find those hidden time sinks.
And you can reclaim that time for what matters.
Exactly. Now, think about your own schedule. Are there areas where you're maybe losing time? More than you realize?
Now that you mention it, probably. I probably underestimate how much time I spend on social media. Or even just responding to emails that aren't urgent.
Those are common ones. By being more aware, you can make conscious choices. The key is to block off time for those important tasks first, the deep work. And then you fill in the rest of your schedule around those priorities.
So prioritizing deep work. Making it the foundation of the day. I like that. What happens after I've made my schedule?
Then it's time to get ruthless. Eliminate that shallow work. And deep work has this great tool called the college graduate test.
College graduate test. Okay, I'm curious.
For each task, ask yourself, how long would it take to train a smart, recent college grad to do this?
Okay, interesting.
And if the answer is pretty short, it's probably a shallow task. You can delegate it or even automate it.
That's such a smart way to figure out what's truly essential. If someone else can learn it quickly, it's probably not the best use of my time.
You got it. The book gives some good examples of how to apply this, like editing an academic paper versus making a PowerPoint.
Oh, okay. So things that really require my unique skills and knowledge versus things that can be done by someone else.
Exactly. So once you've found those shallow tasks, how do you get rid of them? One strategy is setting quotas.
Quotas for shallow work.
Yep. So for example, limiting yourself to a certain number of meetings each week, or a specific amount of time on email each day. The book talks about Radhika Nagpal, a Harvard professor. She sets these strict limits on her travel and on how many papers she reviews.
To free up time for research.
Exactly. Even the most successful people need to control shallow work. And another strategy is to become harder to reach.
Does that mean like going off the grid completely?
No, not necessarily. It's more about setting boundaries, making it clear you're not always available.
So like having specific times for checking email. Or an out-of-office message that says, when I'll be back.
Exactly. Being proactive, not reactive. You're deciding when you engage, instead of letting others control your schedule. It can be tough, though, especially these days when we're always connected. But deep work has some tips, like using a sender filter for email.
What's a sender filter?
You only respond to emails from people who meet certain criteria.
Oh, interesting. So you're filtering out the noise,
Mm-hmm.
making sure you only see the important stuff.
Right. And another tip is, when you do send an email, make it count. Don't just fire off a quick reply. Take some time to think it through.
Be clear about what you need.
Yeah. Treat email as a tool to get things done, not just chit-chat.
These little shifts in how we think about these things can make a big difference.
They can, for your productivity and your ability to focus on deep work.
This has been such a great deep dive. We've covered so much. The value of deep work, why it's so rare, the science behind it.
And all those strategies to make it a habit.
And what I love is that it's not just about getting more done. It's about living a better life, a more meaningful life.
Absolutely. It's about being present, being intentional, dedicating our energy to what truly matters. And it's been great to see how these principles can be applied in so many different ways to fit different lives, different work styles. And as we wrap up, I want to leave you with this thought from Deep Work. What if, instead of asking, how can I fit in more work, we asked what really matters and how can I do that deeply?
Wow, that's powerful. It's a real invitation to step back and look at our priorities.
To make sure our actions match our values, deep work isn't just about productivity. It's about living a life of purpose.
Absolutely. It's about aligning your actions with what truly matters and focusing your energy on those things.
That's it.
Thank you so much for guiding me through all of this. I feel like I have a whole new perspective on deep work and how to make it a part of my life.
You're welcome. And remember, deep work is a journey. Be patient with yourself, experiment, and celebrate your progress.